I was discriminated against all my life because of my golden child sister. Finally, I got my sweet revenge on my wedding day. My golden child sister subjected me to discrimination throughout my life, and she even attempted to walk down the aisle at my wedding. Finally, I had my retribution. My parents always favored my sister, and it wasn't subtle. If she accused me of anything, they would believe her and punish me. But if I accused her, even with clear proof, they'd give her a reduced punishment while also scolding me. My birthday cake was always her favorite flavor, and my parents pretended they had no idea I disliked it. They always bought her more than me and drove us anywhere she wanted, even if it was meant to be about me. My sister grew up privileged, and she used me as a punching bag. She ignored me at first, but things grew worse when we were teenagers. She eventually lost all of her friends, and her behavior deteriorated. Did her pals move away or abandon her because she was mean? I don't know because we weren't close. My parents brag about her accomplishments but never mention any problems, but they continually use my weaknesses as taunting ammunition. I just knew she didn't have any friends since we went to the same school, and I saw she wasn't among people anymore. Meanwhile, I was rather popular. My sister noticed this and instantly transformed me from an occasional punching bag to someone she had to continuously take down. She began accusing me and my pals of further stuff. My parents stopped allowing me to hang out with anyone, using excuses like, "They're not good people according to your sister," or "Why are you trying to leave us? Why can't you be more like your sister and enjoy family time?" My extended family saved me from complete seclusion. Most of them resided in the same town, and despite our age disparities, I got along well with my cousins. They asked me to something, I can't remember what, and I regrettably replied that I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. When asked why, my child self frankly stated that I was not permitted to have friends because my sister did not have any. This came back to the adults, who later tore my parents apart. I was punished for lying and grounded for a month, but they eventually granted me some leeway, so it was worthwhile. My sister has changed schools. I believe the embarrassment of our extended family knowing her socioeconomic standing was too much for her, so she demanded a switch, which my parents instantly agreed to. Even though it cost them more because the school was farther away, she found friends at the new one. However, she never returned to generally ignoring me. She never let me go because she felt powerful enough to tamper with me and was unhappy that I told her family she had no friends. My life remained unpleasant. Her friends would come over and bully me, which my parents referred to as light teasing. I never had friends over since my parents were terrible hosts, and my sister would accuse them of stealing, which my parents believed. I did, however, develop close to my cousins, as my parents would never treat family that way. Then I found my first boyfriend. I did not want to bring him home, but my parents insisted. We were separated at one time, and he came to locate me and told me that my sister was flirting with him. She approached in skimpy clothing, fluttering her eyelids, and began telling him how horrible I was and how fantastic she was. He was irritated and ran off to locate me. Of course, my sister gave my parents a different story. My boyfriend tried to flirt with her, but she understandably declined because she couldn't do that to me. Guess who my parents believed? My guy wasn't ideal, but I quickly believed him for a bad reason. Remember, I was a teen who received unfair treatment. I was bitter and irritable, and I disliked my sister just as much as she hated me. With that disclaimer out of the way, let us talk about appearance. I hadn't addressed them before because they weren't relevant. My parents were overweight and enjoyed expressing their love through food, such as offering more food or purchasing indulgences. My sister was also overweight, but I wasn't. I've always been a little slim because punishment generally involved no candies or food. Obviously, personality is more important than weight. But even then, my sister was unpleasant and spoiled. Even her wooing attempts were unsuccessful since she never learned to work for anything because she could demand and my parents would provide. Add to that the fact that she didn't appear like a sexy model, and my self-conscious teen self couldn't believe my boyfriend would want to cheat on me with her. Anyway, my parents forbid me from dating such a bad boy. I tried to keep going in secret, but it was difficult, and the relationship ended. I did find another lover, but my sister accused him of flirting with her when he declined her advances. Again, my parents trusted her. I tried to explain out how this happened again, but they concluded that I was incapable of making good decisions and continued to choose awful men. The relationship couldn't manage the Romeo-Juliet predicament and ended again. In high school, I was dubbed a slut because I enjoyed making out with males but refused to form relationships. Fortunately, it never made it back to my sister or parents. Throughout all of this, my sister did bring one man home. He was displayed with pride, and my parents spent every second telling me how talented he was and why I couldn't be like my sister and find someone like him. Until he stopped showing up and became a deceitful bastard who duped my sister. Oh well, unfair treatment remained. She had more money to spend at the time, and her curfews were considerably more relaxed than mine. She could travel anywhere at any time, but I couldn't. If I pointed it out, my parents would say it was because she was older, but when I got to that age, I still didn't get the same treatment she did, and when I pointed it out, they denied ever saying that or claimed it was because I couldn't be trusted like she was, citing my sister's accusations against my boyfriends and friends as proof of my poor judgment. My sister's graduation date approaches. She was admitted into a college, but not a particularly prestigious one, and she received no scholarships. Again, because I only knew her achievements, I don't know which universities she applied to, so I can't say how hard she was rejected. I knew her grades were poor in school, though, since every time she received a B, we celebrated. I usually earned good marks, but my parents refused to rejoice, stating that since I always got them, there was nothing to celebrate. My parents understandably celebrated and promised to pay for everything. I was pleased she was going away, but it didn't make my life any easier. She'd return home every other weekend, and either things would go missing from my room, or she'd come up with another way to make my life miserable. My curfews remained harsh. My mother eventually came to chat to me about my upcoming graduation. I'm only 1 year younger than my sister. She informed me that because they were paying for my sister's education, they didn't have enough money to pay for mine, so it would be best if I started working right away after graduation and waited until my sister graduated university to see if they could afford anything for me. Oh, and if I opted to stay at home, I'd have to pay for all of my belongings, a portion of the expenses, and rent. I explained that I may acquire student loans. Mom replied yes, but no, since they were so concerned about me and I had such poor judgment that they would decide whether or not a college education was worth the debt. I'm not sure how they would prevent me from acquiring loans, but I didn't inquire. Scholarships were not mentioned. They had no notion about my academics and never believed in my skills. I didn't bat an eyelash. I merely said, okay. My mother plainly didn't expect that and kept inquiring. Maybe she hoped I'd throw a tantrum so they'd have an excuse not to pay for my college, but all I said was that I understood their position, thanked them for caring, and that was it. My father again tried the same thing, but I refused to be emotional. You know, after a lifetime of their poor parenting, I had no aspirations for my education. I knew they'd find a reason not to pay for mine and make my life miserable. I never thought they'd pay if I worked and waited for my sister to graduate. I'd been preparing for college for a long time. I couldn't go out much, and my friendships were few, so I had plenty of time to study, which I did because I saw college as my one chance to be free. Well, the time arrived, and I worked my ass out to get a scholarship, not to an Ivy League or a law or medical school, but to a good enough course at a reasonable college with full funding. Knowing my sister would despise it and try to stop me through my parents, I posted about my accomplishment on social media at the same time as I told them, even forcing myself to thank them in the post. They couldn't stop me from going since they'd have to explain why to the family. They were first proud and boasted about it, but I believe my sister intervened and they changed gears, even asking me if I was sure I wanted to attend. They let slip that my sister wasn't doing well in college, and because she was brighter and had better judgment than me, I'd suffer more. I clearly stuck to my guns. They were unhappy but unable to do anything. College was my lifesaver. I started feeling delighted. I still contacted my parents and visited them on holidays and other occasions, but because they refused to pay for anything, I could justify not traveling as often as I wanted due to financial constraints. During this period, I avoided introducing any men to them, and my sister quit attending college. I know she didn't graduate because they would have made a big deal about it. She returned home, paying no bills or rent, but it's different, my parents stated, and began working at the same company as my mother, clearly due to my mother's influence. This was handed to me as a source of pride. I'm almost there, I promise. I met my hubby about this time. You know those individuals who say, if I were in that situation, I'd have done something? My hubby is the type that actually does. I'm the type of person that is meek and a doormat in any scenario and then can't sleep at night because I wish I had done something, thought of something clever to say, etc. I'm the type of person that can't stop crying when irritated. My hubby is the one who responds instantly. He enjoys drama and likes to resolve it. He's the type of person who, if he doesn't respond to a slight right away, you should be concerned because he won't forgive and forget. He'll do something worse in retaliation. He was the one who encouraged me to post here and on a nuclear revenge board, but we decided our actions were not nuclear. People were surprised that I got connected with him, but just because I couldn't act like him due to my upbringing didn't mean I didn't enjoy it. I appreciate that my spouse does what I cannot, and that he treats others well as long as they do the same for him. When we talked marriage, we decided we didn't care about the ceremony because of our budget, which we'd rather spend on a dream honeymoon vacation to Europe. We opted to do it in my hometown because his family was spread out while mine was still primarily concentrated there. We weren't too far away too, so we could make occasional long journeys on weekends to manage things. Plus, there was some work flexibility, so we could stay in my hometown for a while if necessary. We put out the engagement news and saved the date many months later. At this point, my parents were naturally eager to meet my man. I tried to grow a spine and reject, but it was difficult. The distance had made me wonder if my folks were really that horrible. My husband looked as if I had canceled Christmas when I assured him I would make sure they were never alone with him. See, he had been preparing for this. He even purchased a high-quality recorder that he could hide in his pocket to record everything. He was ecstatic as he considered all of the ways he could reject my sister's efforts, insult her, and then distribute the tape of her attempts to my family. So he went alone, excited to meet them, and returned euphoric. Babe, you won't believe the awful things they wanted. Babe, we can screw them over so bad. There's so many possibilities. I was perplexed and wanted to hear the recording, but he wisely advised me to listen to him first or else I'd misunderstand him. So he went there, and instead of flirting, my parents and sister sat him down. After some moaning about not liking him, my judgment, and so on, they said that they would pay for my wedding on the condition that my sister go down the aisle. My parents insisted that my sister walk down the aisle first at my wedding, dressed in a wedding gown. Their reasoning was that it was not appropriate for a younger sister to marry first, therefore it was only fair that my sister got the experience, at my venue, with pictures shot, in the dress, and even a cake later. My husband will now type his section. Hello, vengeful husband here. When his sweetheart is wronged, a pro-revenge lurker unleashes instant karma and nuclear vengeance. That being said, as much as my wife, she's now my wife, portrays me as a quick-witted person, I admit my neurons almost short-circuited when those people legitimately propose that rubbish as a nice gift. I believe Troy would want to take in the horse again. Unfortunately, after my brain restarted, I had a long list of insults ready to fire, but something in my soul whispered in my ear, like the devil, string these idiots along. So I said I needed to think about it, see how my wife, who was then my fiancée, would react, and then raced out of there before I could reveal my sinister plans. Come back to me, the wife. So, with a smirk on his face and a recording to prove it, my husband truly recalled how my parents wanted my wedding to be all about my sister. I was taken aback. The distance had softened how harshly they treated me, and I had assumed they would not go so far. Thankfully, my husband's insistence on the angle of revenge kept me from falling into a terrible mood. We had a great time coming up with ways to screw them over, ranging from outrageous to plausible. When we had settled on a course of action, we contacted his much more rational sibling. It involved having 2 venue addresses, giving them the incorrect one, and so on. Well, the sensible brother chastised us for it. While he admitted that he would never be able to persuade us not to retaliate, he did demonstrate that such an action would be difficult to carry out. Some of our other suggestions were also at risk of being sued, so we eventually landed on the most benign strategy. Pretend as if we agreed, but then hire security and refuse to let her in. Obviously, if that was all, it would not be pro-revenge. The remainder is primarily my husband's responsibility, but he wants me to do the honors, so here goes. It is crucial to note that everything he did was previously discussed with me and was based on our joint ideas. He went back to my parents and stated he investigated and thought I wouldn't go for it. However, he did not see the problem and, in order to keep the family together, would be willing to assist them. He pointed out that I dislike conflict, therefore if I was shocked by it, I wouldn't throw a fit in front of everyone. On the other hand, marriage is a major event, so who knows if I'll lash out. So he proposed a compromise. They'd help pay for things. This way, I'd feel even more pressure not to say anything, because not only would we be in public with our families, but I'd also be grateful for their assistance. He claimed my parents were stunned, and my grown sister literally began bouncing with pleasure like a child, thus it was accepted. Importantly, my spouse claimed that I was distrustful and controlling because of some bad judgment and prior lovers. These phrases were all my idea, and I'm so pleased of using their words against them, and that I used to check his phone and other things to guarantee he wasn't cheating on me. As a result, it was critical that no details of this plan be documented. He would go over to their house to discuss any issues about my sister coming down the aisle before me. And so began months of deception in which my parents and sister believed they were duping me, while my husband and I were milking them. Rather than paying for the wedding, they kept quiet. Of course, my parents wanted to be involved with everything, even the songs and color scheme, which were very important to me. My husband would persuade them to let it go to keep me in line, but since we never really cared about the ceremony to begin with, everything else was fair game. Or so they thought. Here's what we did. We'd go check out the drink and menu options, then choose the lowest or second lowest priced item. My husband would then covertly take my sister there to try it out, sighing and saying, "It's a pity we don't want to abuse my parents' goodwill, so we won't get the best options." Cue my sister requesting my parents pay for the best. My parents would then encourage me not to worry and offer to pay for the most expensive option. The same thing was done with the photographer and flowers. My husband gave my sister a bouquet of the flowers we wanted and then sadly stated that I preferred some other tasteless flowers. My parents told me they wanted us to go with the flowers and would pay for it. We encountered a tiny hiccup with the wedding outfit. My parents wanted me to wear an awful outfit. Okay, it wasn't completely terrible, but it wasn't my style and would not look nice on me. We had intended to say okay and then not use it, but my mother sent me a message about it, so there would be proof I said okay. We had to go with my refusal to text and stand my ground. My husband went over there and promised to see what he could do. My sister advised damaging my desired outfit so I'd have to wear the other one. He appeared to agree. Throughout this time, they maintained communications outside of text. We made sure it happened by having me respond to my sister when she attempted to message my spouse. This cemented my husband's uncontrollable and neurotic assertions, so they trusted them and never put anything in writing. Some people may not enjoy the idea of their spouse going around and talking bad about them to family, but I'm such a doormat that the idea of being depicted as this domineering and dangerous person makes me laugh, so I encouraged him to do it. I suppose I have a strange sense of humor. Oh, and my sister tried to flirt with him, but he was too conflicted to convince them he was with them. My husband would pretend to tell them stuff without my knowing, but he never mentioned that we had hired security. It was very funny. My husband and I, who had seriously considered a courthouse wedding to save money for our honeymoon, ended up having this lavish, expensive wedding and barely spending $1. We called it back to compensate for my parents' mental distress. I believe my hubby, he just confirmed this, enjoyed the entire trick more than planning our wedding. I didn't believe it was conceivable to see a person grinning at the prospect of squandering his entire Saturday on a road drive to talk wedding preparations with his in-laws, but here we are. Soon, the day arrived. My parents, sister, and husband devised a plan to wait until everyone was seated, as the bride is always late. They'd have my sister arrive at that exact time so I wouldn't notice her and try to stop it, and she'd walk down the aisle. It would be too late to take action by the time I learned what had transpired. As for my outfit, we preserved some of the excess fabric from the adjustments. My husband brought something to my parents' house, my sister still lives there, and showed them as proof that he had torn the dress, then said he had to return to me because I was enraged and he wanted to calm me down. He said he would see them at the wedding. We first made every effort to conceal our true security. When the guests and my parents came, all they saw was a woman with a list of names to check. We didn't bring out the actual protection until my folks had settled in, a guy dressed like a bodyguard. We told him not to let my sister in and offered him a hefty gratuity if he kept our instructions private. Soon, the moment arrived. My parents received a text indicating that my sister was less than 5 minutes away, so my father indicated for the ceremony to begin. My bridesmaids had been trained to follow his example, so they did so without consulting with me. After they had all taken their seats, my father waited at the door, waiting for me. During this time, a buddy who was not in the wedding party texted me to get ready in case my husband or bridesmaids began texting. This buddy, my husband's ally, was just as ready to create drama as he was, and she didn't mind not being a bridesmaid. As soon as my father took his seat, the bridal song began. The doors opened and I walked in. My father was stunned to see me. He tried to glance behind me but couldn't see the venue door from our position, so he had no idea what had happened to my sister. Then his phone rang. I checked the caller ID, and it was her. He left me with a whisper. Something came up. The room was filled with gasps and perplexity. The companion on the plane questioned loudly what had happened. I lied and stated hysterically, he told me it wasn't supposed to be me there. My husband and I had decided that if my father abandoned me, I should say something to make him look as horrible as possible. The tears weren't staged. I was genuinely upset and trying not to cry. The friend then inquired loudly, what did he mean by it shouldn't be you? So that everyone could hear and spread the message. Then she said, I will go and check, and dashed away. We planned this so that she might cause confusion with the guards and prevent my father from returning to interrupt the ceremony. Eventually, my mother also departed. At this point, my husband's father rushed over and grabbed my arm. He had been advised that he could need to. His desperate dash at me made me smile. I walked down the aisle among whispers as people talked about what had happened. Some people have also departed to check. When I reached my hubby, everything was okay. He consoled me, joked that my sad expression was so genuine that I deserved an Oscar, and told me that he would deal with my parents for their actions. We married without any further complications. My parents did not come back. I watched several individuals leaving and returning during the celebration, but no one dared to tell me what was going on. Someone whispered in my husband's ear, and he went outside. He reappeared later with a thundering expression, but told me he wanted to go hide before breaking character and laughing. It works. Here's what I learned later from friends, family, the security guard, and my husband. My sister arrived dressed in a wedding gown. The security guard refused to let her in, as we had agreed. He told her she was at the wrong site because there was already a bride. Yes, we tipped him well as promised. My father threatened him with the police, claiming he had never heard of him and so couldn't be working there. The security agreed to call the police because he was hired by us and was only performing his job. My father realized it would be too late and demanded that he let my sister in. At this point, the friend approached, began shouting and criticizing my sister, and asking what was going on, essentially stalling. My mother quickly arrived, followed by others. By then, the wedding plans had been destroyed. My parents could only do damage control at this point because everyone who found out about it was shocked that they'd try to pull it off. People began screaming and berating them. The three naturally stated that it was not a secret and accused my husband. When he was summoned, my husband gave his best puzzled expression and denied everything. To quote him, "Gaslight, gatekeeper, girl boss, LOL." He denied consenting to such a stupid scheme. When they insisted he did, he requested proof, which they couldn't offer. All of the text discussions they could demonstrate were regarding typical wedding decisions. My sister was scream-crying and sitting on the floor, kicking her legs like a toddler. My father appeared to want to hit my husband, but security and others pulled him back. Naturally, they claimed they had no proof because my husband had instructed them not to text. My husband chuckled and said, "Wow, how convenient, huh?" Then he reiterated, "Why would I ever agree to something so messed up?" He blasted into them for being bad parents and claimed he wasn't going to allow their dumb plans and lies ruin his wedding before returning to me. Nobody believed them. The venue had cameras, but they wouldn't show me the footage because it was exclusively for security. However, some people did film portions of it. It was entertaining to watch my dad and sister being pulled apart by everyone who came to see the spectacle. After years of being accused and not believed, witnessing them suffer the consequences of their actions was one of the finest wedding gifts. My mother was crying, my father was turning from purple to white, and my sister remained on the floor, wailing and shouting. They said that my husband was involved, but people questioned why he would agree, why there was no evidence, and why they wanted my sister to do this at my wedding. They had no satisfactory responses. They were eventually ordered to leave and had no choice but to comply. My father supposedly had to haul my sister up because she refused to leave the ground. Again, no one said anything to me all night. I assume they wanted to spare me, and maybe it was because I was the bride and not just a guest for once, but everyone seemed to be going out of their way to be polite, cheerful, and thrilled about everything. My husband claims that the costly food and drinks they were consuming certainly helped, LOL. We had a great time. My spouse maintained the forced angry expression for barely a brief time before bursting out in smiles again. After that, we returned to the hotel to get some sleep before leaving on our honeymoon. Speaking of which, my parents offered to pay for our plane tickets, but we thought it was risky because they could cancel them or something, so we declined. Since then, all three of them have attempted to contact me. I've refused calls because my spouse insisted on leaving a paper trail, a wise decision, as my sister ultimately messaged me. I won't repeat what she said because it was very out of control and didn't make much sense, but the important part was that she blamed me for her humiliation, called my husband a two-faced snake who duped them for months. He wants to print and hang that on our wall, LOL, and hoped, but was also certain, that he would cheat on me. She even implied that he was cheating on me with her. My husband stole my phone, screenshotted the call records, my sister's texts, and some messages from my parents requesting that I pick up the phone, and uploaded everything to our family group chat. He also provided him images of communications in which they called him names and threatened him, but he continued to say, "You're delusional, I never agreed to anything," and threatened to sue them for defamation and harassment. He posted a message in the group chat pleading my family for aid because I was always being tormented by them. He begged them to prevent my parents and sister from spoiling our honeymoon after they failed to wreck our wedding. He ended by requesting that they not divulge our locations in order to prevent my parents from sending my sister over. as well as stating he had somehow agreed to pretend to sleep with her in our honeymoon suite, lol. My family told him that they would manage the situation, and we have been at peace ever then. My husband is a little unhappy that my sister did not misbehave so he could call her out again while tearing her a new one. We will see if the peace lasts. Overall, while I would have liked a normal, loving family at my wedding, they failed to ruin something precious to me, and I retaliated. Extra information. Do I understand why they treat me that this? I've been asked this question several times, so I'm guessing you'll be wondering the same thing. I've pondered this my entire life and still don't know. When I was younger, I tried to ask, but they denied any difference and reprimanded me for being spoiled, so I gave up. I've explored numerous alternatives, but based on my observations, I believe the answer is this. I was unplanned. They spent a long time to have my sister, so she was not only wanted but also treated as a miraculous child after so many years. However, considering our short age gap, I believe they did not anticipate to have another child so quickly or easily, and they did not provide proper protection following my sister's birth. Perhaps they didn't realize my mother was pregnant until it was too late, leaving them with an unwanted kid while also dealing with a newborn. They aren't well off, so the extra expense probably didn't help, and they disliked me. But that's just my guess. Regardless, I've accepted that the cause won't really matter. Whatever they did to me was unwarranted. Did they honestly believe it would work? My spouse and I believe that they never intended to do this at all. We believe my sister had a fit because I got married first, despite the fact that she barely gets dates, and they forced my husband to accept that absurd idea. They didn't want to pay for my wedding because they didn't think we'd accept or that it would look good for them to do so. By recommending it and being denied, they might appear to be the nice guys to my sister while providing an excuse not to pay me $1. But my husband eventually accepted it, and they couldn't go back without risking my sister turning on them. Mother-in-law unlocked our front door with a key I never gave her and tried to take my son, so I called CPS and handed her a court order. She said, "I just want to see my grandson." Then she showed up, with a camera crew. The video went viral. The threats came next. And then? Child Protective Services knocked on my door. This isn't just a story, it's a nightmare. The sudden arrival of my mother-in-law into our home occurred each and every morning. "I'm here to inspect how you're taking care of my child," she exclaimed with a smile. Despite the fact that I had replaced the locks, she showed up with an extra key. In a fit of rage, I made one last move, and when she attempted to enter the building the following time, she was confronted with a court order that caused her to scream. It never occurred to me that getting married to David would also give me the opportunity to marry his mother, Margaret. She seemed to believe that she had an open invitation to our lives and our home from the minute we said "I do," which was the moment we had our wedding. It was a subtle beginning, with a knock here and a visit there. But before long, it became a daily routine. Every single morning, without fail, Margaret would sneak into our home without us having to ask her to come in. I would be in the midst of feeding our child, with my hair disheveled and still wearing my pajamas, when I would look up and see her standing at the doorway with that recognizable grin on her face. "I'm here to inspect how you're taking care of my child," she would proclaim, her eyes searching the room for any indication of disorder or neglect. "I'm here to inspect how you're taking care of my child." With all my heart, I made an effort to be patient. After all, she was a member of the family. On the other hand, her persistent intrusions started to wear on me. It wasn't just that I didn't have any privacy, it was also the underlying message that I wasn't good enough, that I couldn't take care of my own family without her supervision. I made the decision to handle the matter one morning, immediately following a night in which I was unable to sleep with the infant. "Margaret," I started, attempting to maintain a steady tone in my voice. "I have a lot of respect for your concern, but I require some space. Could you kindly give me a call before you pay me a visit?" To indicate that she was taken aback, she raised an eyebrow. "Dear, I'm only trying to be of assistance. There is no need to send invitations to family." The realization that this talk was not going to lead somewhere beneficial caused me to let out a sigh. David's discussion of the subject was just as frustrating as the situation itself. He did not appear to be willing to take a stance, as he appeared to be caught between his mother and myself. In his words, "She's just trying to be involved," he would remark. "Maybe she's lonely." Whether I was lonely or not, I require boundaries. In order to take control of the situation, I decided to change the locks on the door. My desire to exert some control over my own home was so strong that I felt like taking severe action. On the following morning, while I was taking pleasure in a little period of tranquility with my cup of coffee, I became aware of the distinct sound of a key turning in the lock. My heart sank to it. When Margaret entered, she was clutching a brand new key in her hand. She remarked, "You changed the locks," feeling more amused than upset at the time. "Yes, Margaret, it is." I responded with a tone that was tinged with frustration, saying that we required some privacy. She huffed as she made her way to the kitchen as if nothing had happened from the previous moment. "Well, that's not very welcoming," she said. I had reached the point of no return. The fact that the locks had been changed has not discouraged her. All she has done is obtain a new key. My need was for a solution that was more conclusive. While conducting research into my alternatives, I came to the realization that in our state, repeated unwelcome incursions may be considered trespassing, even if they were made by members of the same family. I couldn't continue to live in such a state, despite the fact that it seemed severe. After consulting with a lawyer, I was informed that I had the ability to submit a petition for a protective order. After documenting Margaret's repeated intrusions and our attempts to set limits, I felt right in making this decision, even though it was not an easy one to make. Exactly as was anticipated, Margaret showed up the following morning. However, I was prepared for this time. As I handed her the court order, I observed the transformation of her expression from one of smugness to one of horror. She hushed under her breath, "You can't be serious," as her hands began to shake. "I am sorry, Margaret, but this has reached an unacceptable level," I asserted in a forceful tone. "We require our space." Before she stormed out of the room, she let out a scream that was a mixture of anger and disbelief. David was in utter disbelief. After a period of time, counseling, and a great number of conversations, he gradually came to an understanding of the impact that his mother's behavior had had on both my marriage and my relationship with him. From that point on, Margaret maintained her distance. It became a calm morning for us, and our home became genuinely ours. We fought a fierce war, but in the end, we were successful in regaining security for our shelter. The court injunction brought about a period of relative peace that lasted for a few weeks. During the time that I was nursing our child, there were no unexpected visits, no snarky comments about my cuisine, and no cold glares. There is only quiet. Although David made an effort to maintain a normal situation, the stress was high. Because of this, he was unable to move. Although I was aware that he did not hold me responsible, I was also aware that he was missing her. It is difficult to put into words the level of strain that accumulates when you are the one who is responsible for separating a family. After that, David arrived home from work one day not appearing sleepy but rather anxious. He was not exhausted. He took a seat for me at the table in the kitchen. He whispered, "She has hired a lawyer," and left the room. I blinked my eyes. "What?" "It appears that she is attempting to contest the court order. Argues that it is not fair. You are accused of manipulating the judge. He asserts that you have lied about everything." I was attracted to him. Although I was not surprised that Margaret would go to such a low level, hearing it out loud had a different effect on me. I said, "I documented everything," while attempting to maintain my composure. "Every visit, every time she walked in without knocking, every time I asked her to stop." He indicated with a nod. "It is true, I have faith in you." To add insult to injury, she is not only fighting it but also making it public. It turned out that Margaret had been telling everyone, including her friends, her relatives, and members at her church, that I was unstable, that I was controlling, and that I was keeping her away from her granddaughter out of spite. In addition to that, she started posting on Facebook. With enough ambiguity to prevent a legal challenge, but with sufficient clarity for everyone who knew us. Examples include statements such as, "It is extremely distressing when someone poisons your child against you. There are some women who marry only to divide, not to build." I did not give a response. No, I did not post. My defense was not forthcoming. I was aware that my response would only serve to reinforce her story. But then she went one step further than that. After some time had passed, I was at home by myself with the infant when I became aware of the doorbell. Only the sound of the bell luckily, and not the sound of a key. Taking a peek through the peephole, I felt a twisting sensation in my gut. It was Margaret, who was accompanied by a camera team and was holding a bouquet of flowers. It wasn't me who opened the door. She remained outside for 15 minutes, throughout which time she spoke at a volume that was audible to the cameras. "I just want to see my grandson," she said in the most endearing language she could muster. "Is it a crime to love your family?" After that, she made her way to her vehicle and drove away. After 2 days, a video found its way onto the internet. This was presented on a YouTube channel that specialized in family rights. The subject of the article: "Grandmother blocked from seeing grandchild, daughter-in-law goes too far." A portion of the video went viral. Unknown individuals weighed in on the comments, which erupted. Some people referred to me as evil. It was said that Margaret was insane. On the other hand, everything was open to the public. Because of everything, my family was thrust into the spotlight, something we had not sought for. David attempted to have the video removed from the internet. But, once something is uploaded to the internet, it quickly spreads. I started receiving direct messages. Threats were made by some. Some were simply disagreeable. After that, Child Protective Services arrived. Someone had made a report, and I am curious as to who it was, stating that our infant was being neglected. The caseworker was courteous but still assertive. The house was inspected, a lot of questions were asked of me, notes were taken, and she looked at our kid, who was clean, fed, and smiling, and she did not find anything wrong with everything. Despite this, it rocked me to my very core. It dawned on me that this was not only the behavior of an overbearing mother-in-law. Margaret was eager to fight, and she had no qualms about getting her hands dirty. That evening, after the infant had gone to sleep, I sat down on the couch with David and whispered, "If she wants war, I'll give her one." The first thing that David did was remain silent. It was just him looking at me. When he finally spoke, he remarked, "You are not alone." After that, I began making preparations for my impending relocation. Initially, I decided to keep a journal. We receive every call, every message, and every suspicious car that is parked close to our home. I wasn't paranoid, rather, I was well prepared. It took me some time before I shared everything with David. With work, the visit from Child Protective Services, and his own feelings of guilt, he was already under a lot of stress. The affection he had for his wife and his devotion to his mother were at odds with each other. I didn't want to put a further burden on his shoulders. However, it was imperative that I be prepared since I had a feeling that Margaret was not yet finished. I was correct. After a week had passed, I went to pick up the child from daycare, and the instructor, Miss Carey, appeared to be in a state of discomfort. "Hey, Sarah," she murmured with a cautious tone. "Can we talk for a second?" My stomach became more constricted. As I followed her into the office, she took out a copy of the daycare pickup list and handed it to me. In addition, Margaret's name was included. Somebody had called and updated the list of people to contact in case of an emergency, and it appears that this had taken place over the phone. "Did you approve this?" Carrie inquired about it. "No," I replied, my tone of voice icy. "I didn't." She gave a slight nod. "We found it to be quite peculiar. The reason we did not give him to her is because of this." She was present, however. It was Margaret who had arrived at the childcare. My child was the one she attempted to pick up. Then, after expressing my gratitude to Carrie, I took my son and drove directly to the police station. Even though I was shaking the whole time, I was able to complete it. A report was submitted, our restraining order was revised, and the daycare was included. They assured Margaret that they would get in touch with her and give her another warning. She ought to have been fearful about that. It did not happen. David was out with his buddies late into the night 2 nights later. When the electricity unexpectedly went out, I was at home taking care of the infant for a while. The entire home is dark. I became numb. Considering that it was storm season, the answer is no. I peered out the window. The lights on the porches of my neighbors were still on. On our own. I made a phone call to David. There is no response. The electric company was the one I called. There have been no reported outages? After that, I became aware of it. There was a gentle knock at the back door. Neither did I move. I did not take a breath. I dialed the emergency number. Although the police did not discover anyone when they came, they did discover some wires that had been cut near our breaker box. That had been messed with by someone. That evening was the one in which I set up the cameras. Only the genuine ones, not the imitations. Complete protection. This includes the backyard, the front entrance, and the side windows. Following 3 days, we were able to capture her on tape. 2:42 a.m. We found Margaret on our property, approaching the window of our infant's room. This is just standing there. Looking over. I went to my attorney and showed him the footage. We requested a comprehensive restraining order from the court. Although we already had one, this was taking things to an all-new level. It wasn't interference at all. This was a case of obsession. David was finally able to see it, every single thing. Beyond that point, there was no way to defend her. He severed all communication. He prevented her from calling him. He instructed her to never get in touch with him again. Despite the fact that we were disturbed, we felt that perhaps, just possibly, it would be the end. It was not the case. In the following few days, David's car was broken into while he was at work. Simply, the car seat was ripped and chopped to pieces, and a message was affixed to the dashboard that said, "You are allowing her to ruin everything." There was no theft occurred. Since there was no signature, we did not require one. The following week, we relocated. The new address was kept a secret from everyone, including extended family members. We upgraded our phones and updated our phone numbers. It felt like we were being protected as witnesses, but we had no other option. There were a few days of relative calm. There were no knocks, no messages, and no calls from Child Protective Services. None of it. Prior to the arrival of the letter, there is no return address provided. There were copies of court records contained within. Margaret had submitted a file for the rights of grandparents. A visitation lawsuit was filed against us. At that moment, I came to the realization that this was not solely about control. It was a genuine belief on this woman's part that she had a legal right to our child. This was not in the end. The opposite is true. When I read the newspaper, I couldn't help but cry. I won't lie. It wasn't just the surprise of being sued that did it, it was the cumulative effect of everything that had come before it. Due to the breach limits? The dangers that exist? The campaign of maligning? It was the visit from CPS. The incident of the childcare. The night that she stood outside the window of our infant's room. Now she was requesting that a judge compel us to allow her to re-enter into our lives, as well as into the life of our child. It seemed as if I was unable to take a breath. David's anger was on fire. I had never before witnessed him in such a manner. Within the kitchen, he punched the wall. He hurled his phone across the room in a wide arc. Above all else, however, he appeared to be betrayed. He was betrayed by the woman who had brought him up. He was very self-critical. It was also my fault that I had waited for such a long time to speak up for us. For the possibility that she will become more calm, because I chose to be courteous when I ought to have made a clear decision right from the beginning. Once more, we hired a lawyer. In this particular instance, it was not only about safeguarding ourselves. This was about ensuring the safety of our child. Margaret might be seen sitting in court dressed as if she were a saint. Cardigan in a light pink color, pearl earrings. She went so far as to bring photographs of herself holding our child and smiling, as if those brief moments were evidence that she was nothing more than a loving grandmother. In her testimony, she described me to the judge as unstable, possessive and jealous. She portrayed herself as a victim in her head. Stated that she was concerned about the health of her son. It was necessary for her to step in. I was sitting there, trembling with anger. Under the table, David clasped my hand in his. It was then our turn to speak. We provided everything, including the logs, the texts, the testimony from the daycare, the police reports, the investigation by Child Protective Services, and finally the footage. The one that occurred at 2:42 in the morning. In the darkness, she was standing outside the window of our baby's room. As soon as that film started playing, there was complete silence in the room. Margaret attempted to speak, to cry, and to convey all of these things, but it was already too late. It was impossible for her to argue her way out of this situation. Keeping a stony expression, the judge leaned forward. It is not the case that a grandparent who is devoted to their grandchild is denied access. Harassment, manipulation, and a hazardous disrespect for limits are all present in this situation. Despite her plea for grandparents' rights, he did not grant them. Following that, he imposed a restraining order that was permanent. Her ability to communicate with us or our child in any form, for any reason, was prohibited for an extended period of time. However, that was not the end of it. As it turns out, it is a criminal offense to file a fraudulent report with Child Protective Services. Additionally, it is illegal to tamper with a breaker box. As is showing up at a daycare center in an attempt to pick up a child for whom you do not have legal custody. A fortnight later, she was taken into custody. I was the first one to receive the call from him. As for the detective then? After that, the news station began making phone calls. Recall that her video had gone viral at the time. The question of what actually took place has piqued the interest of the public. And all of a sudden, those who had previously trusted her recognized the reality. She quickly became a source of humor in her neighborhood. There is a restraining order against the grandmother. Her congregation turned its back on her. After that, her friends stopped responding. During the day that she was taken in, David was quite quiet. He didn't take any joy in it. There was no gloating on his part. He did nothing but stare out the window for a considerable amount of time. His words were, "She was my mother. But you were right." We remained silent as we sat there. If only I could say that I had a positive feeling about the outcome. On the other hand, I simply felt exhausted. Enraged. It is hollow. I wish I had put more faith in my gut impulses earlier. I really regret that I let that courtesy lead us through agony. But we were able to escape. Attempting to exert control over us caused her to lose everything. To what end then? To demonstrate a point? To emerge victorious in a battle? It was only a permanent seat on the outside that she was awarded. Again, we relocated, but this time it was across the nation. The blank slate. The new city. Exactly 3 of us. No one enters our house without first being requested to do so. Not ever again, ever.